So, the title of my talk today is Hallucinations and Imagination, Tender Searching. So, a hallucination, we talked about a definition yesterday, is the perception of something, a sight, a sound, a smell, a taste, or a bodily sensation that seems real, but is not actually present in the external environment. And we added in the hallucination has also the addition of confidently saying something that's inaccurate when you don't know the answer. So this is a big territory. And in Buddhist teachings, I'm going to jump to our experience because we're really looking at the senses here, that taste, touch, smell, body sensations. Each of those senses comes with its own heart and mind in its own way of knowing. And yesterday in my meditation, I had some imaginations from my acupuncturist days. The body channels that were discovered to connect the sense doors to the rest of our body in Chinese medicine. And four of the senses are at the head: the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. And I was thinking, no wonder people feel like they get stuck above the head, everything above the head, and that these channels were likely designed to bring the senses into the body. And in my thoughts about it, we could really say those channels are imaginary. They're not visible to the naked eye, and they're invisible to Western medicine. And yet the whole system of medicine has been built on and practiced for thousands of years on these channels. So my takeaway was that imagination can help us remember more conditions, other connections. And by putting imaginations into action, we start to see where this holds up and where it doesn't. And that sometimes imagination, when acted upon, it shows hallucinatory aspects. That's the place where we can see it. In Buddhism, imagination isn't inherently unwholesome. It's really looked at as the mind's capacity to have images, to have stories, and possibilities. And it's really part of our cognitive functioning. Stephen Batchelor, a well-known secular Buddhist writer, he takes it further. He places imagination on the Eightfold Path under intention. And he says that what is known and familiar becomes the water we swim in, and it can keep us in ruts where it's hard for imagination to emerge. So he advocates for what he calls ethical imagination. And he will often talk about it as the ethics of uncertainty, because imagination is not certain. And he really describes this and wants to kind of keep that uncertainty along with imagination. But he goes in the direction of saying, I'd like this to be grounded in not looking for right and wrong, but for the many shades of gray. Now, he doesn't say the many shades of gray, I do, but he said right and wrong. So traditionally in monastic communities, imagination was used for Buddhist-y things. This is again, my language. Reflecting on compassion, may all beings be free from suffering. Visualizing the Buddha, or merit that can be gained from visualizing the Buddha. Practicing metta, saying phrases that of loving kindness that basically we call it friendliness often, but it increases our connection with other beings, especially those we don't feel it naturally for. And in reflective meditation, as I see it, we've expanded this imagination to be used for other things, for contemplating possibilities for ethical action, for re-envisioning experiences, especially painful ones, re-envisioning them with awareness, with kindness and curiosity. So this really takes imagination into a much larger and broader context within our practice. Because in Buddhism, imagination comes with a warning label, a little, be careful, skull and crossbones. And the teaching on that is papancha, Papanca. It's a fun word, and it's an interesting teaching if you want to look it up. It basically points to mental proliferation, the tendency of our thoughts to multiply, and get tangled up in webs of stories, of judgments, of selfing. It's what happens when imagination becomes unskillful, becomes compulsive, becomes self-centered. Um, we could think of it as, and I liked this word of it, when our imagination gets hijacked by craving and ignorance. But of course, craving and ignorance, they're not always so clear. We can't always see those clearly in our experience. And I found it's more typical that we can really become more aware of craving and ignorance slowly over time through our experience. Our experience helps us affirm what is not, what goes into the direction of craving or um, not knowing or harm, rather than to jumping to a conclusion about it before we know it. So Papancha, I think, is a very interesting teaching. And the other reason I think it's like this, it's interesting, it's because it's been so confidently promoted as wrong in Buddhist traditions. Promoted here meaning elevated. It's always taught that way first. It's wrong to have Papancha. And also that it's widely advertised. Most people, when they hear Papancha, they think, no, not me. So I want to give you some traditional examples of Papancha. One, replaying conversations and imagining all the ways someone wronged you. Two, building elaborate fantasies about success, failure, or blame. Three, creating inner monologues of comparison, pride, or shame. No laughing during this part. No, I'm just kidding. Four, getting lost in what ifs and if onlys. So this can be really confusing when you come to reflective meditation if you've been taught no papancha, because our practice of adding in reflection, this kind of technique of adding in reflection after meditation, we don't restrict these papanchas, these four examples, from going on and arising in the meditation. We actually are more in the direction of letting them come in, giving them time to be seen and known, and hopefully unspinning and unraveling themselves. And knowing when they can't unspin and unravel, and when we have to take some more firm guidance with ourselves. But the reflection afterwards is actually what allows us to let these in safely. That's our guardrail, is the reflection after. So still in my thinking about this, I think the whole topic can tighten us up. I was really excited to dive into hallucinations and think more about them and explore them. And I forgot that it could take us into confusing territory, into territory where we're really unsure, where we have a lot of fears, where we've maybe explored but haven't gotten to some safe places or grounding or settling within ourselves, and tense territory even. So last night, in thinking about this talk about imagination and hallucinations, the words of a newer meditator, new to reflective meditation, came to mind. And she had wrote, I'm hoping our conversation about meditation would help me with what I call a kind of tender searching. And I could feel those words, and I remembered those words, and they really reminded me to explore this topic with tender searching, in order to get more of a sense of how to be skillful with our imagination and hallucinations. So I'll end my Dharma talk here.